And I want to tell you that I sympathize with building heights, and I spent most of my career in Paulsville talking about building heights, and I get it. It's important. It's important. So I do want you to think about this. You have the sheet here that shows you, but we also have a large scale picture behind you over there by Nick. Please feel free to get up and go walk over and take a look at it. But before you do, I want on your worksheet, these heights are already on the books. So I want you to know that community mixed use, which is the purple zoning here, is 45 feet. That translates to 4 stories. Downtown is already at 45 feet. That's 4 stories. But downtown 1 and 2 is 38 feet. That's going to be 3 stories. And the lifestyle district is 55 feet, which is 5-story-ish. It's not really fully 5 stories. The thing to think about is typically your first floor is going to be about 12 feet, and then your floors going up are going to be at least 10. 9 is considered a low floor for residential. So just think in your mind 10. And so that's why when I said lifestyle is 5-story-ish, it's not quite 5-story. It's like the other thing is that these heights are going to most of the time be flat roofs. So, and that's because you're trying to capture those residential units. So some jurisdictions will allow a higher height with the caveat that like the extra 10 feet is for a peaked roof if you want to have that variety. So be thinking about, so when you think about building height, also give me your comments about, or give us, the comments about what our current heights already have, what you already have on the books. And then I think with that, I'm going to ask Travis, is there anything that you've heard of from the development community or any applicants about building height that would be relevant to the council's considerations of what's appropriate and where in the city?
A lot of the feedback we get is where it makes sense for them financially, right? And the combination of parking and things like for a downtown to go up 4 stories just isn't enough, and that extra 5th story maybe pushes them over to the point where they're like, all right, I can do underground parking, and now I can actually finance it because I've got that extra 5th story. So that's some of the feedback we get, but it's not like that often, right? We're not upstairs like fielding calls every single week or even month about like, how do I get a 5-story building in a downtown? It's just, it's not a conversation we're having that often. So
thank you.
I mean, you would be able to tell because they would tower over the buildings that are here and they're not. So.
Right. My question was, for the record, is if he could talk about how many people have come in and looking for permits for these things under existing regulations.
Right.
So
It's interesting because I've taken this journey, thank you, in Paulsbo, and we had mixed use code for almost 15 years before somebody came in and used it. So it is a distinctive market. You may not be quite there yet, but again, we're planning for 20 years. We're setting the foundation for what it could be. But parking is a big thing. And so right now, each zoning district has a little bit of parking, but we probably would need to look at the parking and streamline that in order to take away that barrier. So I'll quit talking and let you guys think about it. Please feel free to get up, and we made these large scale for you all to take a look at and just ensure that you can visualize what they might look like. Also, if you feel like a building height's too tall for downtown, it would be good to know that as well. If that 45 feet. And that's in the downtown core is like, you didn't know that it was 4 stories. Maybe, it would be good to know that too. Yep. Exactly. Yep. And then DC 1 is kind of this taupe, and DC 2 is the bluish periwinkle.
And I don't know if it was by design, but at least in the scenario 2 and 3, it looks like the lifestyle district is gone. So I don't know if that means there would be no 55-foot buildings allowed, but I personally like the lifestyle district. I'm just throwing that out there.
Good.
And I think if you want to, like the VFW is 3 stories. Do you know where that is? Where Sunnyside, where you turn to go to the post office? That building there is 3 stories.
Yeah. The veteran foreign wars.
Basically been
building.
our tallest building in Squim for the very longest time.
Mhm.
And I've heard a lot of comments. In fact, I've heard it a number of times that the granary is our signature tall. And so, part of what we can build in is the preservation of that through view, ensuring that is protect that view corridor. And view corridors is a slippery slope, so I'm not really introducing that idea. Don't worry, Christina. I know I say most attorneys are like, stop, don't talk about view corridors, but there are ways of making sure that if there's a signature thing that needs to be seen throughout the community, that can be preserved. Like, for example, I'm sure once I say this, you'll be like, oh, of course, if you're on the ferry or going into downtown Seattle, you'll see all the towers, and the Space Needle does not have that they purposely did that because nothing could be taller, and they have a whole ratio. It's a whole mathematical formula because I looked into it one day because I was super curious, but so there's ways of doing that, and that's not going down the view corridor path. So
I guess I just had a quick comment of whenever I'm talking about the height of buildings, I always think about Port Townsend and how their downtown, if it was, a requirement that buildings on the water side of the street could only be 1 or 2 stories, it would look so different. And so thinking about the different visually appealing kind of buildings is kind of in the back of my mind.
This is a question for you, Rachel. How many floors does the Elk Creek apartment building have?
There are 3 floors, but the first floor it's kind of, I think it's kind of sloped down a tiny, tiny bit. So I don't know the actual height, but it feels sloped down on the first floor. So a part of that might be a tiny bit underground, maybe. I'm kind of looking at the planning guy, maybe, I don't know. Okay. But yeah, 3 floors. And the only time it feels like a lot is when you have a Costco haul to carry up the stairs. I used to live on the 3rd floor, and that was the dreaded day of the month. Now we're on the 2nd floor. It's not so bad.
So while you guys are thinking about that, I thought I'd walk over here. Oh yeah, well, Dan's over there. So I wanted to take a few minutes then, once you guys are you wrapped up? I know we haven't really let y'all finish your worksheet for talking, but I thought I'd pull up this a little bit because I wanted to talk through with you guys. So I'll stop talking, let you finish your worksheets. But what I want to do is talk about the architectural elements of these buildings that make it feel different, better, or worse for you all, because architectural design is going to be the key piece that we're going to want to consider when we're doing our development regulation updates as well.
And I definitely have some thoughts on that. Good. Already.
Do you guys think we're
Can we-
ready?
Can we pause for just 1 minute? Can we take a 5-minute recess? Please, maybe, yeah.
5-minute recess?
Yes, please.
Heather is asking for 5-minute recess. Yes,
I support that.
5-minute recess it is.
right, thank you. Council went into recess at 2:05 and it's 2:13 and council retreat is beginning again.
Thank you, Heather. So I think we all got a chance. You all got a chance to finish your thoughts. So Christina will be our recorder. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and start with you, Kelly. We'll go around the table with your thoughts on building height. And then once we get that recorded, I think then we'll just have a quick conversation. I'd like to get up and kind of walk through the pictures and you guys can tell me what pieces of the architecture elements that you like or you don't like, and we can, get some refinement there. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I think like the east and west ends of the city for the mixed use, I think 4-story buildings is probably high enough. As far as allowing in regional commercial, I think,
To be here.
yeah. Yeah, I think it would be a good idea. Yeah. And a new multifamily zoning district, I think would be a good idea. I'm not sure where it would go, but
I agree. I don't know if I copied you or what, but
not-
taller buildings pushed out to the east-west freeway entrances. And then I agree with Travis that we do need to keep the lifestyle district. I think we already have commercial. Do we already have commercial, regional commercial? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So- Oh,
Be allowed in there.
yeah. So I agree. And then if we have multifamily zoning district, I don't think, 3, maybe 4 stories. Yes.
Now that Vicky pointed out the VFW hall, I think
It's perspective.
it gives perspective. 3 stories, I think, could be manageable downtown. I'm concerned about the accommodations for parking though, because it's pretty tight right now. I know with those apartments that have been going in along the alley there, it's going to be a battle though. But on the east and west ends, I mean, I could see going up to 4 or 5 stories, unless you can accommodate for some height. Maybe it's 4 stories plus either rooftop patio or solar, which would be beneficial. I really like when you go to Seattle and you're in one of the high-rise hotels and you look down and you notice how many little patios there are with trees and greenery. Let me see. So I put up to 4 or 5 stories at east and west ends. And the lifestyle district already has some larger buildings. So I don't, like the lodge and the hospital and such. So I don't think that would be much of an impact. They're already present. And I checked to, yes, allow in regional commercial and the east end.
What did you think about a multifamily zone?
I'm in favor of that. I just can't quite picture where.
No, I know. That might be the trick, but as long if you guys, what I'd like to gauge today is, are you open to that idea?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Fantastic. Rachel.
Definitely open to multifamily, all types of housing. I think having it be more diverse in any area we can put it, that makes sense, like accessibility wise, I think would be really important, trying to prepare for all the growth and help manage that. I also wrote down, the parking issue. So being able to allow like underground parking, if it's not already allowed, would be really important to get rid of that barrier. But with security, like cameras or something, just for safety purposes. And then I also circled like the current building heights is preferred, and it's with like other people said too, like East and West having taller buildings, I don't mind that at all. It's just I didn't know that this was our current build. Like people aren't utilizing it,
That's
and
right.
so it's like it's interesting seeing how
Until the first one comes in, and then
Yeah.
everybody will be like, "Oh my gosh, what happened?"
See it.
seeing
Yeah.
how kind of like how we did with the ADUs, you know, having all these opportunities for things, but people just don't use them until they feel like it's a financially good idea. So just kind of frustrating. And then just about how things look. Do you want to wait for that on the
Yeah,
next part?
we'll do
Okay.
that next. Yeah. And you were supportive of a new multifamily zoning district.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely. This was a really helpful exercise, and this is such a great discussion. I like what you said about the. I think I appreciate that you brought forth the example of the Space Needle, and I think that we really should keep the grain or hold that space around the granary, treat it like our little Space Needle.
Yes.
And so maybe just have some height restrictions around that. Rooftop gardens was something that also was thinking of. And I wrote down that the mixed use multifamily buildings ought to be within 2 miles of Washington Street and along Washington Street.
Right.
And I'm only saying that because I think that it's important to make sure that type of housing is occurring closer to transit. But I'm also not like, I'm not going to be like, no multifamily housing outside of 2 miles of Washington Street. I mean, we need that multifamily housing in our city no matter what. But it's just a suggestion. You know what? I'm going to write to be closer to transit around here.
Great.
Transit routes can change too.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. So that's just framing that is what my thought process was there. I think that no more than 3 stories in downtown would be helpful to quote preserve the small town feel. And then I'm definitely in favor of having multifamily housing, regional commercial, multifamily zoning district. Absolutely. I vote that we have it. I'm not voting. I'm sorry. My preference, my thought is that we allow it to be up to 5 stories. You know, people might not use it, but you know, maybe making sure that the multifamily zoning district wasn't too close to the core. And then, otherwise, I think I'm of similar mind to my fellow counselors in that I think the East End, where the Holiday Inn is located, as someone mentioned, you can't even see. It doesn't block views. It's the way that the topography there works. It works nice. Thank you. That's what I have for now.
Great. Thank you. Bring us home, Dan.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that. The 4 stories with rooftop patios is very attractive. Obviously, an attractive architectural style. When you say our tallest building is the VFW style, that building, that's kind of throw up in my mouth, but we can do better. And I think we would do better. East and West End for the regional commercial. And the multifamily is a tick on yes.
Great.
Closer to the core for accessibility and transit, as Harmony was saying, and I appreciate the comment that our transit routes can be adjusted, so that would not be difficult.
Great. Well, thank you all really so much. So I'll go over to the building height and maybe we can kind of talk through some architectural elements that you like or don't like, and then we'll transition to attached housing types that are on a smaller scale to be thinking about Could they be incorporated in our R48 zone? Could we see them in some of our commercial zones that are apartment buildings or mixed use like we talked about? But I did want to just quickly note on something before I walk over there, which is the underbuilding underground parking component. And that might be something that we talk a little bit more later in the year when we get to development regulations. But I will say that that is a piece, again, that I've worked a lot with at the city of Paulsbo. And I just want to just say it for y'all to be thinking about. Underground parking is super expensive unless the topography is sloped enough that it makes sense to go into it. So what we experienced in Paulsbo was underbuilding parking was utilized more. And so then they would have the first floor actually be the parking garage. And then they would start with a second floor of, depending on whether it was a fully residential or it had some components of a commercial piece to it, and then the second and third floors would be residential. So it's something that we'll, that the planning team and I will work through, probably looking at mixed use structures and mixed use sites with it. But just to note that given the opportunity for underbuilding, it's going to be versus underground is probably going to be underbuilding unless you have a slope that you can take advantage of. So just with that, so let me walk over there, and you guys can swing your chairs around if you need, and we'll make this just a quick exercise. But when we're talking about everything from 3 stories to 5 stories, what starts becoming important is that urban form. And we won't, again, we don't need to take a lot of time on it, but we have some examples here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on what do you like about it. And it's everything from, and I mean it's everything from building materials, placements of windows, use of awnings, the use of transparency on the first floor, insets, outsets, step backs, and Travis, you can speak to it. I think you all have a little bit of everything already in your code. I know that's the case for codes that I've written as well, because they do make a difference, especially in a community like Sequim, where this is the first entry into these types of buildings. You want them to be right because you get them for a long time. So let me just walk over here if you guys want to. So let's start with the 3-story build, 3 stories, which I feel like is probably what I think I heard feels appropriate for downtown as the maximum building height. Was there anything here that we have a variety of options. So this is very modernish. You would see this a lot on the I-5 corridor. It would tick off some design elements like variety of building or variety of materials. So we've got some lap siding, we've got some articulation and color, we've got some awnings here, we've got transparency, we even have a slight corner treatment. This one is the material's brick. It has some kind of old world elements with our arched windows. It's if you took away the brick, it might be kind of ugly down here. So the first floor isn't really treated here on this side, but a little bit more here. But it still kind of works because it has that old world look. It has a rooftop treatment here with some detail. And then we've got, this building is a little mix of, we've got some bricks with, more modern, we've got some step backs, some articulation of walls. And then we have a parking lot with underbuilding parking. This is actually a very common design for buildings. We have one under construction in Paulsbo that looks a lot like this, although we made them do some more peaks along the way. Inset, outsets, variety of building types. Okay. So I probably won't describe all of them, but that gives you kind of the idea of the things that the planning department would look at and consider, or that we would put in a zoning, in the zoning design standards for mixed use buildings. So anything that stands out that I can circle or Christina can record. Well, I think in general, we'll go ahead, since it's already 2:30, we'll go ahead in general, what you guys like and what you don't like. We'll just start with that. Anyone?
All right, I will jump right in.
Rachel will jump
So
right in.
I'm a really big like art, visually appealing, color, all that kind of stuff. And so what stood out to me was, the old timey type buildings, like in the 3-story, the top left, or in the 4-story, the bottom right. Those look so old timey city to me that I don't think
Oh, thank you.
they
Yeah,
would
thank
look
you.
nice in Squim. Like it wouldn't go
They-
with our cottagey type
they would
aesthetic. I
not.
do not like that.
Okay.
Hard pass.
Port Townsend, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So preferably not, in my opinion, no. The ones I really did like were like the 3-story, bottom left, and top right. Anything that uses different types of materials and different colors, I think really helps break up how tall it is. So you don't perceive it as tall as it really is. Does that make sense? So I really like those because they just break up the visual appeal and make it more dynamic and just, more visually appealing. Another highlight, and it works for the 5-story ones too. The ones that are broken up by material and different colors, they look smaller to my eye, and it could just be my eye. Another general comment is that we are a tree city, right? And so any green space that we can get and could require would be really great because it also breaks up that feel, and in the summer would really help break up that hot asphalt, cement city type of yuck that I don't think anybody really likes. And I don't mind like parking on that first floor. I think it's a good use. Because it really helps break down that parking barrier. And I think those are all my comments.
Great. Thank you. What else?
I was with you till your last comment.
The parking.
The parking,
Yeah.
only because it just so much of that plot is being used as hard surface.
Yeah.
But the fact that there's parking underneath. So I'd like to explore right before we got into this, you said that underground is very expensive. I'd be curious to know because that just seems like such an elegant solution.
I know. I'm with you.
Maximize the space. So it would seem to a developer that, if they've got to use up half of their plot to provide parking spaces, then they've minimized the rentable space. But anyway, I like the upper right hand with the park adjacent to the building. Again, kind of goes along with what Rachel was saying. And again, the upper left is not Squim. It's beautiful, and I like it in other cities, but it's not us. If we're just talking about the 3-story quad.
Thank you. What
Yeah,
else?
I agree with Dan and Rachel. And also, I think just the modern look and construction is probably more practical. And as far as like energy usage, and it's probably better. Just better use of space and windows and materials.
So we're surrounded on both sides by Port Townsend and Port Angeles being port towns, and the brick is very natural to those areas. The only brick building I can think of is our school administration building, but that's unique. When I think of Squim being a farming community, prairie town, I think about the false facades and more wood elements. I love what the River Center's done with all their wood elements and beams and light. Is there a model where for underbuilding parking, where the front of the building that you see that's on the street, the front half of the building maybe is retail, and people access the parking from the back so that you maintain that full 3 stories? Okay.
Yeah, you can build in code that says something like that, establishes that, or that you have to use that first story for something. So I think, for sure.
Actually, I saw a building in Salem, Massachusetts, again, very historical brick and all that. And it was a brick parking garage right down on the water. And as you walked by, all you're doing is looking in the slot of just cars. And it's like, it would have been nice to have the first floor at least be retail or something visual. So I was wondering about that. But otherwise, I just always think about the false fronts and facades and how we could incorporate what Squim already looks like.
Yes, absolutely. What else?
Well, I'm looking forward to our eventual, that corner is called there by Over the Fence as being kind of the gateway when people enter the city.
I'm a big lover of the green space. I kind of wish outside our, or at least like in our downtown, I kind of wish there was more room for, to put in more green spaces, like at least like trees or something. But, you can't just inherit what you inherit. But I'm also looking at like the windows, and like if I'm just comparing in the 4-story top left, how big those windows are compared to the 3-story top right, I prefer the bigger window
windows,
option.
yep.
Yeah.
Mhm. That's right. Yep.
It just looks more inviting, I guess. And, people that live there might not think the same way. Yeah. But just being able to see that, I think because the light reflects off of it and it just doesn't make it feel like such a enclosed cave space. Like if you're walking down the street with taller buildings, if the smaller the windows, it just feels like a cave.
No, and I agree. I will say that this is much more difficult under the new Washington Energy Code. So I know there's always something. I know this one's my favorite too. Yeah, there's lots of, but Harmony, go ahead. You have the mic.
Yeah, thank you. I think so. In terms of aesthetically pleasing, my favorites are in the 3 stories on the bottom right hand side, or my right hand side. This one. And then I'm just going to point. I like this one in the 5-story one. It's very interesting with the different shapes and all that. I also like this one here in the 5-story. Also, for the same reasons, it's very interesting to look at. I agree with you. I like the look of the 4-story building, that your favorite, because it's a mixed type.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
This one, yeah. So this one's going to be the most expensive one to build, and it's all the changing roof lines. It's the
It's all the fun
inset
stuff.
It's all the things we like. All the things we like. If Travis took this picture out and showed a developer, he would sit there and tell you like 5 reasons why he can't build this or it won't pencil. And so that's the part.
That one would be really hard to make affordable.
Yeah, that's the
So-
part to balance out. But sorry, I interrupted. Keep going.
No, thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm just, just looking at this from different perspectives, and that piece is really important too, to make sure that it is affordable. My favorite, another reason why I like this one up here in the 3-story box is it does have that pointed roof, so it makes it, like you were saying in Paulsbo, they made sure that it looked more like a house.
Right.
But that
was after they got like 4 flat roof mixed use buildings. And they're like, oh, let's change the code. So they do have some that they already have that they have to live with. But yeah.
Yeah. So thanks. Really appreciate that.
Good. Thank you. So I'm keeping an eye on the time because I'm going to move this back and we're going to move forward our housing types. But I wanted to ask a quick question on the 4 versus 5 story, because even though it's basically 10 feet, it's a big deal, right? It's a big difference. And so we already have 5-story-ish in the lifestyle zone. Would you want to stay at the 4-story for the nodes, what we just talked about in our community mixed use or some of the other zones, or if we were to find the right location for a multifamily zone? Yes. And I know it's kind of hard to see.
Affordable, because the reason I didn't answer the last question, because I'm more interested in what's affordable than what something looks like.
Okay.
But so would having 5 stories make the housing more affordable, or doesn't matter?
Well, here's the
So
thing.
much a square foot, no matter what.
Yeah. And the folks who are going to be building are truly affordable, which is going to be the 50 or below, are they probably are not going to be able to do 5-story, I'm going to imagine. So 5-story would be a private developer that would be increasing your housing stock for probably that 50 or 80 to 100. So your service workers, your young adults moving out on their own, that's going to be what that market's going to be. That would be who that market would be for that. For your deeply affordable, I'm not even sure if it would be any of these actually, to be honest. So this exercise was about your downtown, and it was about increasing your housing stock in those zones along the corridor, but probably not the deeply affordable. But I can appreciate, Vicki, your comment. So, and that's what makes this all very difficult, is that we're talking about this under the umbrella of affordable housing and the income bands as the state's requiring us, but it's not necessarily going to result in that.
Carla, I'm sorry, Rachel, if I may ask a question, kind of piggybacking off of what Vicki had mentioned. What about the possibility of developing, like, Travis, I think you might know where I'm going with this, is developing different architectural standards
That is
for
exactly what I was going to
those
say.
lower zoning types that are more, could be used more affordable, still have standards.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt that we can do that. So you can have market rate housing, and you can have for affordable, and it's going to be depending on who the applicant is, and there might be some covenants that would run with the land. I mean, there's a lot of different things that can be done, and that's not uncommon. One of the comments received by the development community is taking a look at the impact fee structure. And, there's going to be a number of things that when we take a look at the development standards and taking a close eye to affordability, and again, removing barriers and providing opportunities that we could look at. So, okay, so I'm going to take a moment here. I'm going to move this back. I'll move this one forward. If you guys want to get your sheet that has the multifamily units, thank you, Dan, out. And so what we're considering, what the assignment for this is similar to what you've done before. Thank you. Is taking a look at these different housing types and thinking about, primarily, I want you to think about what, if any, are appropriate for the R4 to 8 zoning district. So right now, 4plexes are allowed in the R4. They can be through the PRD. And then during the break, Travis reminded me they can also be standalone 4plexes through an administrative conditional use permit. Again, do we want to allow for any additional types of units here? So these are going to be, again, the 50 to 80% range. It's possible that depending on who, if it's a Habitat for Humanity or, Housing Authority, they could do some type of for the more deeply affordable. So thinking about our zoning did the R4 to 8 at this current time, based on that map, has the biggest residential capacity. So where could we add opportunities for different housing types? But also think about if there's, these would also be housing types that we could put into a multifamily zone. And if there's any other places that you think you could see where these might be appropriate in the city. How are we doing? Need a few more minutes? Are we getting, okay. Did you, so we'll go around the table again, but did you guys find this one a little bit harder or? Yeah, a little bit. Okay. I do want to note, in case you guys are going to say this, that design probably also makes a difference for these as well, too, and ensuring compatibility and where they're going to, where they're going to get located and fit. So with that, I'll start with you, Dan. We'll go around the table for the last time this afternoon. Although I'm sure you guys will go around the table again later
I'm sure
tonight.
we will, yeah. But I'm amused, and I put a little smiley face because I was going through thing by thing, looking at it back and forth, and then got to the all tick after I ticked them all. So
Okay, good. That's
so
awesome.
Should have saved myself a little time there. In terms of where in the city, I can't see where not. So kind of be cautious. I like, of all these samples, I like it when parking's integrated and not a separate parking lot. If they can be like on the central courtyard or the cluster, if it could be entry from the back, so it maintains a community on the street or on the front. I find that very attractive. And then ultimately, I think developers will judge what the market will accept if we think out 10 years, and I'd be concerned that we don't constrain that kind of creativity, because what we see here kind of, what I see sort of influences my preferences, but I can imagine somebody could come in here
That's right.
tomorrow with a very attractive design, and we would all of a sudden find ourselves having to come back to it. So let's be cautious about constraining too much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. First thing that Counselor Butler said, I was just like, yep, where not? I'm kind of in the same boat. And I just checked all because don't really, they're all, I don't see that any of these are really particularly unattractive types of housing. I think that I really like the side court look, because there's definitely built-in component right there for storage and for their car. So that's really nice. I like the look of a courtyard cottage space as well, but I wonder if it seems, as nice as that is, it's also in terms of increasing density, there's pros and cons, there's trade-offs to that. So I think that the as much as I like the courtyard cottage, that one was my least favorite through the lens of increasing density availability of housing.
So the meaning that it would increase the density because we would have smaller lot sizes for those. Is that what you're thinking?
Just that, well, so that's a type of, the courtyard cottage looks like a type of housing that incorporates a green space right up next to those houses, which is lovely. But but in terms of like a city space, an urban thought process, I think it's more effective to have the housing all happening together, and then everyone uses green spaces together in a different place. So it's more kind of like this, because those look like private green spaces, which is lovely. But in terms of the lens of how do we have more increased density and availability of housing.
So like a trade-off between green space and higher density is
yes.
like the.
Yeah. So this one's not scoring very high for me in that, through that lens. And that's what I have so far. Thank you.
Thank you.
I like all of them. I mean, I think, what did I write down? I wrote down, we need to allow for opportunity for any of them to increase the housing pool for diverse needs. So just because I don't like the look of the detached cluster, and I would probably not live in something like that, it doesn't mean that somebody else won't, you know? So being able to allow for any of them, like anybody's going to have different needs, you know, like recently divorced single parent is going to have different needs than I have. You know what I mean? So being able to just allow for diverse options, I think, is really important to just overall positively impact the housing pool.
Great, thank you.
I like all of them, but preferentially the ones that have take up as much as possible of the lot with the housing, so it's really dense and you have the ability to make it more affordable that way. You know, maybe they don't need to be 1,700 square feet each. They can be a mix, different sizes. I'm not sure about the ownership structure on these. That's the only thing that I couldn't factor in. You know, with the townhome, usually the person owns their home as opposed to the land. Yeah, so there's a little bit of different ownership qualities here because I think we need room for renters as well as people who want to be homeowners. And there are a lot of people, younger people too, who want to be able to rent, not have responsibility for yard or, you know, maintenance. But I don't see why any of these concepts wouldn't work anywhere in town either. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you.
I didn't like the side court because it reminded me of housing you'd find near a military base. But I did like the other ones. I especially like the detached cluster in the courtyard cottage because of the ability to have personal green space. I think that's important. I know a lot of people who want to have their own little garden or even a chicken or two, you know, so I think it's important to offer these all throughout the city.
Yeah, I liked all the options except the courtyard cottage. Just doesn't seem like the best use of space, and probably it looks like it's probably the least affordable. If I were to pick one, I'd probably pick the 4 or 5 plex. Just gives more opportunity for renters, and I think that's what we need most is rentals. And as far as where they can go in the city, I think wherever they can fit.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. So I wanted to just make sure that I heard, you're right, I'm pretty sure I did, that you're open to having different housing types that are attached housing in the R48 zoning district. Okay, that's awesome news, honestly. That is going to go a long way, and making some efficiencies and some permitting efficiencies in the zoning code will really open up a market that, going back to the morning slide for your local developers between what they know and opportunity. So I feel like you guys, was great news. So good job, because that will make a difference. So we have one more wrap up slide. If you guys could, you can leave them at your space. We're almost done, just last few minutes. And then if you can leave your worksheets, if you don't mind, if you would like copies of them, let us know. We'll make sure we'll make copies and give you the original. If you don't need them, then that's fine, but they're important for us. So for our wrap up, you guys did a great job hanging in here for a long 5 hours. So I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for the time, the thought, the careful consideration, and the deliberations that you made today. What you did today may be like, okay, that I don't want to diminish what you did. You've set a policy foundation for us to move forward on the comprehensive plan. So we really want to just say thank you for that. As you know, this is kind of a wrap up of everything that we just talked about today. We're updating the comp plan. It's due at the end of the year. There's a lot of work has been done. There's more to be done. You picked a scenario preference. You've talked through building heights, and you talked through housing types. Those are big deals. So thank you. All of those will eventually, mostly where you're going to see those changes are going to be in the development regulations, but the comprehensive plan are going to have policies, goals and policies that are going to support the things that we talked about and that you set your preferences for today. So the last bit is just opening up for anything that you didn't. So last slide is just opening up anything that you want to say that you haven't already said, and anything that you would like the planning team and your your administrative staff and your city manager to know about the future comprehensive plan or the comprehensive plan that we're working on, and anything that you want to make sure that we know. And again, thank you for this. Thank you for your time and your day today. Really appreciate it.
I did have one question. So the comp plan, right, it has these different facets that you need to address for the next 10 to 20 years. And so today we talked a lot about the housing portion of it. And so I'm curious, will we have an opportunity before December to talk about those other portions? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just
So
wanted to make sure.
there will be a chance to talk about all of the elements. The main reason we wanted to focus on housing today is because of the new rules and the new laws established by the state, and the fact that it was going to require some changes to the housing type that's currently allowed.
Gotcha.
So, but yes, you and the Planning Commission both will look at all of the things.
Okay.
And that's a great segue for me, is just the decisions, we ditto everything that Carla said today, and the conversations and the reasoning that you have here are really going to provide a good foundation for those conversations with the Planning Commission. So I think housing, I think, is going to continue to be the forefront, as it will shape a lot of those things moving forward. And as Carla said, it already had probably the most significant changes of any of them. So
okay. And I just wanted to say, final thoughts of, I really want to thank SCJ for putting a lot of effort into the comp plan, but also want to thank Christina for stepping up, and for the planning department for really honing it. I'm getting there. Yeah. So just because I know that there's a lot of demand on the planning department in general. And so I really appreciate all the effort that you guys do on the day-to-day, but also huge thank you to Carla for diving in head first and really helping me. I can't speak for everybody, but helping me understand my role in the comp plan process. And it is such it's an exciting feeling to feel like not 100% of council members will ever get to be a part of this process. So it just feels so special that we get to be the people to work on the next comprehensive plan. So I want to thank my team, for everybody, for being transparent and honest and open about how they feel about everything today. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Two things are sitting in my brain's parking lot. We went by it quickly on the building height, but the architectural style on building height would be an important feature. Kind of the higher the profile, the more important having constraints on the architectural style, I think, will be to me or to the community. And then just this last screen, some form of this to add to the public facing, not only the swim, the website for the Swimagine,
yeah,
but the newsletter, whatever we can do to just keep the public informed of the progress we're making, and the significant meeting we had today, and the direction we're heading, I think will just help build some confidence that and transparency and so on. So.
Anybody else?
Not my meeting, but I will. I seem to remember when we changed the code to being able to go up to a fourplex on single family lots. We added a little bit, Travis, you remember this probably, we added a little bit of wording to elevate the design, kind of the architectural design, did we not?
Yeah.
To try to make them a little more appealable.
Yeah,
And
that was one of the points of contention on it, because the biggest supporters of it were like, well, this is going to be, we don't really want design standards getting in the way of what we're trying to build, but everybody else is like, it's going to be really ugly if they're not.
Right.
So we kind of struck the.
And that's what I would just bring up, is that and I don't know where it fits in. When do you get to design and to appealability or whatever? But it certainly, I love addressing housing and making it, especially affordable and whatever, making it a community for everybody. But it'd be nice to also make it aesthetically without adding to a lot of cost. If there's a sweet spot there somehow to I think some of the things that we talked about was just kind of roof angles and some in and out and up and down, some fairly minor things, but it definitely made it not look like a box or whatever. So
That's right.
All right. Anything else? Yeah.
I wanted to thank you for being for your time, Carla, and you definitely helped me know that through this discussion that there were that in terms of protecting natural resources, that is a huge part of this process and conversation. And so, and thank you also, staff. And yeah, so that was my closing comment on that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Council. Feel free to get up and stretch your legs for, I think, something like 2 hours. Yeah, 2 hours. So, yes, we do. All right, thank you so much, everybody.